Blair's segment every Thursday here on the show. He'll be at TJ Ribs tonight for the Brian Kelly Show, which will air live 7 p.m. from TJ Ribs on the LSU Sports Radio Network. Welcome back, Voice. Welcome home. Tough trip to T-Town in Tuscaloosa. That was a back-and-forth heavyweight fight that we thought we were going to get, and LSU just won too many mistakes to get out of there with a win. That was a tough one.
Yeah, it was. I mean, and that's kind of the way you knew going into it. I mean, that's typically how these games go. I mean, I think back to several over the years that have been close, and frankly, they have been a lot of games decided by a score or 10 points or less, and some cases a field goal, in some cases 1 point. It comes down to, as I said on the broadcast, usually the team that blinks first, sometimes the team that blinks the most. And I mentioned it Monday prior to the press conference. You can look at the score, you can look at the drive summaries, and have not seen any of the game, and that pretty much tells you what happens. I mean, Alabama with 11 possessions, two of them one ended the second quarter, one ended the game. They missed 2 field goals, which again a little surprising. Reichert his first miss, and then he missed another. And then they had 1 punt. And then they scored touchdowns 6 times. LSU with 10 possessions, and again, that interception, while you can't lay that on Jaden Daniels, you can give credit to the line to deflect it, and then it just went straight up in the air, and Arnold was able to get the INT. But that, to me, the inability to get that third down conversion on a drop, which then led to a score, which then led to an interception and a score, by Alabama. I mean, that swing there was the difference in the ball game, and it was unfortunate. And of course, you're without Jaden Daniels a good portion of the fourth quarter, and while I think with him in there, you have a little bit of hope that anything can happen as quickly as he can move the ball down the field and score. But with him not in there, that changes the offense quite a bit. And just a tough outing. So now you have to turn around, as Coach Kelly said, and I think the biggest challenge of the year now is going to get these guys fired up to play a Florida team that frankly is not one of their best teams in the history of their program. But I think they've been a little Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, they've had some good games this year where they've been able to put it together. Maybe not all 3 phases, but the majority of the 3 phases. And I think they're going to be plenty motivated because, I know Coach Napier, with a little bit of heat gathering around there in an already hot Gainesville, Florida, you don't get bowl eligible and things really get ramped up on you.
What'd you see on the Daniels hit?
I was targeting, but again, I said it Monday, and I'll say it again here. Preface, it didn't have an impact on the game. It was a big moment in the game, don't get me wrong. But, I've been in Birmingham personally 3 times with the head of officials. They invite us all over, all the broadcasters in the league, and they go over any new rule changes, any tweaks to the rules. And inevitably, every year, it's always a discussion about what's targeting, what's not targeting. We've all been told, here are the ingredients, and these ingredients have to be all together to be targeting. And to me, that was targeting. But, as I said Monday, I don't know what targeting is. I don't know that the SEC officials know what targeting is, because I have seen it called for less. I have seen it, again, called for not called for much more. My biggest gripe is the procedure and the way they handled it. And I told you before we went on the air real quick, the hit was made. They told us in Birmingham that their instructions to the officials are, if it looks like targeting in real time, you toss the flag. We'll then rely on technology to clean it up and determine whether or not it was. So the fact that they didn't ask for targeting on the field stunned me. Secondly, every play is reviewed. Even the most minute play of a game is reviewed in real time. The fact that somebody in Birmingham didn't buzz the officials in Tuscaloosa to say, hey, guys, not sure, but while this injury timeout is here, which we're already waiting around 3 or 4 minutes, we need to check for targeting. It's close. The fact that they never came out and said this play is under review from targeting is, again, to me, more egregious than whether it was targeting or not, because procedurally, I think they should have done it, and it gives the SEC officials and the SEC in general a bad look, and it certainly opens the door for those conspiracy theorists, which I am not one of. I've said it all along. I don't. I mean, they're making so much money over there. I don't think they're really involved in individual games.
Right.
But I just think it gives credence to those who say it's not even across the board, simply because here's the thing, Jordy. Had they said we're going to take a look at this for targeting, they had plenty of time to do it. And they could have come back and said, hey, after review, it wasn't targeting. And we'd still all, in purple and gold, been upset about it.
Right.
But the fact that they didn't even do that is what is a head scratcher for me. But, I've said it all along. So, I hear so much about AI and how it's taking over our lives. I think the first thing it ought to do is take over officiating.
No doubt.
And get me the lasers and the cameras and put
Chips.
sensors and chips in the ball, and let's figure this stuff out. We saw the NCAA came out and said the officiating in the women's championship game was not up to standard.
Thanks.
Which I think made the cover of Duh magazine.
Right.
But anyway.
Well, what do we do with the chain
I
gang?
digress.
No, I appreciate you. I'm sure Brian Kelly appreciates your rant, saying things that he wishes he could say. I think when you got here, this Florida series turned.
Yeah.
I think like the season you got here, 16,
when it got really nasty.
Yeah, like both sides kind of started hating each other. What have you made of this? I guess rivalry.
Yeah, it was my first year in 2016. The little fisticuffs for the game, and
Guys.
now they got to keep them well separated, just to warm up, which is crazy if you think about it. But it's interesting. I was talking to Sean Kelly, who's the voice of the Gators, yesterday on our podcast, and I asked him. I said, "Hey, when we get rid of these divisions and the guaranteed cross rivals, like, does Florida want to keep this game?" And he had a good point. He said, I think Florida fans in general do, but you think about this matchup and how many times both teams had a ton on the line from a conference and national perspective. Or at least one team or the other did, which gave motivation to the other team to wreck it because they wanted to, because it was either LSU or Florida. The crazy stuff that's happened in games, not quite to the level of Auburn, but similar, especially here of late. The fog game and throwing a shoe and all that goes with that. I think it's a really good rivalry. Again, television thinks it is. You think about it.
Yeah.
They put the game on the 6-day hold, the flex.
Right.
CBS did, because they saw down the road, hey, there's Florida and LSU, and depending on what happens this past weekend, that might be the marquee matchup for a Florida team that's got 5 wins.
Yeah.
So, I think TV understands the importance and the eyeballs outside of both Louisiana and Florida that will watch this game. And I think both fan bases, while they hate each other, I don't know. I think Florida. Sean said he thought the Florida fans wanted to keep it as a regular annual affair. I don't know about LSU fans. I like it just because it's very contentious and both teams get after each other, and both fan bases are like. They have such a personality, and they're not the same. They're very different, but they have such a personality that when you put those two together, whether you're in Gainesville or here in Baton Rouge, I just think makes for an electric atmosphere. Right. So, anyway, I kind of hope they do, but it's been fun to watch this thing get nasty over the last 8 years.
I agree. Yeah, it's been right when you touched down. That exact season was when it went. The back-to-back years that you had to play at Florida and the shoe game and. It's been wild, man.
That was another great job by the SEC handling that. Yeah.
The Burrow 19 game we were talking about earlier, that was a great one.
Oh, man. The atmosphere there. That was really, to be honest with you, in 16, I mentioned it last week, that was a great introduction for me, Alabama LSU, because it was packed out and there was a ton of buzz. And but for me, I think my first, this is what Saturday night in Death Valley is about. Truly, for me, was the 19 game against Florida. And then Burrow and them just pulling away late. That touchdown pass to Jamar, it was like that was the crushing blow. I've seen some good ones. Seen some crazy ones, too.
How about Matt McMahon's crew? 100? Look, man, I know that the competition, but Will Baker and the crew looked really good.
Yeah, I'm impressed with Will Baker, and John Brady, who, knows a lot more about hoops than you and I. he's been really impressed with Baker's play because I think he likes his game.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he's 7 feet, and yeah, he's 250 pounds. That doesn't always equate to, great inside player. Not to mention the fact that he can step outside and hit threes, which he hit 2 the other night. But John talks about his patience and his almost like radar-like ability in the lane to, get the ball in his hands down near the basket. And then he kind of slows the game down to see where his defender is, which hip, what side.
Yeah.
Are they double teaming him? Who's the open guy? He's really I think that's a big talent because you see a lot of guys in the game the way it's played today at both the NBA and college level is there's not really a true 1 through 5 anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, you got guys that are handling the ball like point guards that are 6'10", 6'11". And I wouldn't say he's a true back to the basket throwback player, like Shaquille or
Sure.
Melvin Turpin and Sam Bowie of years gone by, and Patrick Ewing and Ralph Sampson for some of the older crew. But he's got that game, and to me, that's a big asset. Not to mention the fact that through the exhibition game, what I've seen at practice, and then Monday night, you've got some guys who can sit out there and knock down threes, which it's been a couple of years since LSU's had that threat. And now you add this inside piece at 7 feet tall that teams are either going to have to double or just try to play one-on-one. I like it if they leave him one-on-one. I also like it if they double it. He's an excellent passer, according to the coaches. And you got Tyrell Ward and company out there ready to knock down inside, outside threes. So that's a different weapon, I think, for LSU than we've seen in a while.
Big day over the last 24 hours, too, for them in recruiting. I mean, the message is starting to take shape.
And Matt's kind of, if you've been listening to him, that's kind of what he's been talking about is the job that his staff is doing in recruiting, and that, that they were really behind the 8 ball when they got here.
Yeah.
And I know we all expect, that first recruiting class, it didn't hit the way it should have. Well, okay, there's probably some reasons for that. But there's no denying the fact now that he's getting out there. I mean, the 6'11" kid from Texas, the guard out of Memphis that played in Florida. I mean, these are 4-star guys.
I mean, he's going into Memphis, beating Memphis for 4-star guards.
Yeah.
I mean, he just outlasted Texas for a Houston prospect and Robert Miller. I mean, those are big wins.
I don't know how many people caught it, but, I think Jordan Wright before the season, he was asked about, hey, you come back home to Louisiana after a really stellar career, 1,000-point scorer at Vanderbilt. What was the big impetus there? Was it coming back home? And he said, well, sure, but he said it was really Coach Matt McMahon and this staff, like having conversation with them, seeing their vision of this program, and it happens to be my home state. Yeah. My home city, love to come back. But I think you're starting to see how this staff is really able to tell a good story and get people excited about coming and playing for LSU. And as Matt told us after the game the other night, the beauty is when you look at the number of guys who are from the state, and John Brady has said it since day one, like it's great to go pull a kid out of Florida or New York or California and all that. I mean, and hopefully they can continue to do that. But John said, we really fought hard for 3 stars and 4 stars that were in Louisiana because we felt like, having LSU on the front of that jersey meant something to them. And I think Matt now is buying into that, and you see this with this roster now. And being around them, watching them at practice, they're having fun playing basketball. And if you're not having fun playing basketball,
it's not fun at all.
Your team probably shows it.
Yeah. Brady's Final Four run, all 5 starters from Louisiana. A very cool time in Louisiana basketball during that time. Glenn Davis, Garrett Temple, Tasman Mitchell, Early Doucette, who was a football player, were all a part of a AAU national championship team that had kind of come up, and now they were starting in basketball and then Final Four.
Funny story the other night. Baker got a high post, turned, flipped it back to a guard, and then just stood there. Screened off the defender. Guy knocked down a 3. I said, John, you got to love that play. Big guy comes outside, sets the screen, doesn't have to move, and just kind of flips it to an open guy 3 feet behind him. He goes, yeah, we had one of those plays for Big Baby, believe it or not. I said, I bet you did.
That big old ass. That's the base maker. Blair, good to see you. Have a great call on
Let's
Saturday.
have fun.
Thanks for tuning in to our premium LSU content right here on YouTube. If you want more of it, subscribe below.